You're listening to The Extra Real with Ger Brown
and Colm Ryan for a look at the bigger picture of film.
with films from around the world,
Through the decades,
from movies you know and love.
to movies you need to discover.
This week on the show we're talking about a film that's really been hiding in plain sight. It's one of those films where you knew about it. It's a film that was Oscar nominated in 2015, but neither of us had seen it. And I think anyone that watches a lot of films, you're always aware of things that... You're aware of more films than you've actually seen, which is the tough side of it. And this week we're talking about Wild Tales.
Yeah, Wild Tales from 2014, Argentinian film directed by Damien Zifron.
Okay, so Argentinian cinema is not something I've seen loads of. In fact, I suppose the way things have gone in the last few years with South American cinema, we've probably seen more films from Chile and Brazil and Mexico.
Yeah, I'd say kind of, Argentinian cinema, it's not really as well travelled as other South American countries. You've got Brazil, obviously. You'd have had Fernando Moraes from City of God and directed Concert Gardener, Jose Padilla, who directed Bus 174 and Elite Squad. And I guess more recently, from Chile, you'd have had Pablo Larraín who did No, and Jackie recently.
Yeah.
So it's other countries seem to have been you seem to be more aware of them, I guess.
Yeah, which is strange because just looking at Argentina, it has an established film scene. It's got prominent film schools. It's got decent state subsidies. Now, what an awful lot of the filmmakers would say is that there are issues with some of those, and that they will kind of use that. A lot of the filmmakers just get tired of the red tape and the bureaucracy, and they go off and make their own films. And we've seen that here with Ireland, where people get sick of queuing up for things like Screen Ireland and stuff, and they go off and look for other ways of making their films. But what has emerged from what I've been reading is that guys could be working on 2 or 3 of their own films, but actually they might be working on a state funded film as well, which is basically keeping the other ones afloat. And so that's important. And I know Viggo Mortensen came out a couple of years ago when the government were going to slash film funding, and of course Viggo, good old Viggo, was, I think he was raised there, spent an awful lot of his time there, and so he was quite strong in his wording of it as well, and so it has an established film scene is basically what we're saying, and it's strange that I haven't seen more.
No, completely. For me personally, I remember seeing Secret in Their Eyes from 2009, and in the year after I saw Carancho, but that in 2010. But other than that, recently, no, I haven't been aware of much Argentinian cinema.
Yeah.
But this actually is the most successful Argentinian made film in Argentina.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the director, Damien Zifron.
So Damien Zifron, he seems to be quite a successful guy. He also directed this TV show back in the mid 2000s called Los Simuladores, and that is the most successful TV show in Argentina. So he seems to know what makes a hit, I guess. He seems to be a producer and a director. Famously for this film, he wrote a lot of these stories in the bath.
In the bathtub, right?
In the bathtub. He'd had a period of producing and directing a lot. He felt very burnt out, and he just said, "Look, for a while, I'm just going to write." He had that luxury, and he apparently wrote 15, 20 stories because he was always trying to get scripts made or had ideas, and then he boiled it down to the 6 that we see in this film.
Cool. And I suppose just give us an overview, just a really broad overview of what the film is actually about.
Okay, so it's an anthology film. It's 6 stories. They're all kind of linked by revenge or vengeance in some way. The first story, Pasternak, is about the passengers on a plane realize they all know a man called Gabriel Pasternak who has taken the plane hostage. The second story, Las Ratas, or The Rats, is about a waitress seeking revenge on her only customer, a loan shark who had ruined her family. The third, El Mas Fuerte, The Strongest, is a businessman insults another while overtaking him on a quiet runtry road, only to meet him again when he gets a flat tire. The fourth, Bombita, is about a bomb disposal expert seeking revenge on a towing company who constantly tow his car away. The fifth, La Propuesta, or The Deal. A wealthy man tries to get his gardener to take the fall for a crime his son committed. And the final story, Hasta que la muerte nos separe, Till Death Do Us Part, is about a newly married couple's wedding descending into disaster when the bride finds out about the groom's affair.
Yeah, and like what I like about the anthology format, like, and what's one of the strengths of the film actually is, they play like short films.
Yes.
And sometimes if you see 5 or 6 short films back to back, it can be exhausting. And rarely have I seen 5 or 6 short films so good back to back. And overall, like, so for me, one of the big things is that it conforms to formulas that I use for kind of vetting or reviewing short films. So like, there are 4 emotional hooks. Then you can use this for features as well. But like, things like information, bonding with the main character, creation of conflict, and a resolution. Like, that's a kind of a nice package that I like to see on any good short. And in all of them, they all conform to it in some way, shape, or form. Like, we know quite quickly in each scenario what's going on. They all have a resolution, which in most cases is quite funny. And then slotting them all together, like, how did I find it? I think the most on a whole, like, I really liked it as a viewing experience. Like, it's very mainstream. Like, we listed some other films earlier on when we were talking about the Oscar nominees that it was paired up against. It's a very mainstream film. It's super accessible. It's very funny in places, and I think for me, 5 out of the 6 really worked really well. The 5th one kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, but it works in the context of the 6. With the follow-up, the final one kind of just counterpoints it. So, it's a good selection of films.
No, it definitely is. And I mean, there have been a lot of anthology films, obviously recently you had the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, there was VHS, there was the New York, I Love You, Paris Je T'aime, Sin City, Coffee and Cigarettes. But rarely, if you have like 5 or 6 kind of films together like this, are all of them as strong.
Yeah.
You can be watching one and be like, oh, do I have to sit for 15 minutes of this to get something better? I think that was a real problem with the Paris Je T'aime and New York, I Love You kind of shorts. And that obviously it was different directors and different outlooks and stuff like that, but some were a lot stronger than
big
others.
Big time, And like, we've seen it with even some of the earlier, it was a big thing in the 60s as well, those kind of portmanteau things, and Boccaccio 70 and Spirits of the Dead. And yeah, sometimes you're stuck waiting for the next one. I think the thing with things like Paris Je T'aime and New York, I Love You is that, yeah, they were short enough, but there was so many of them, and it became an exhaustive experience. I know when I go back to Paris Je T'aime, I just skim through some. I mean, like, I just find the ones that I want to watch. I think I've watched it once fully through a second time, since I saw it in the cinema. So, this one holds up, doesn't it?
It really does. And I almost was when I was watching it, I kind of felt it almost had kind of similarities to like modern TV shows, like say The End of the Fucking World, or almost like Black Mirror, in that you've got this episodic feel to it.
Yeah.
And there's a constant kind of, the pace is really good in this. Like, it just keeps going and going, each kind of short. It has to find a resolution somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's going to get there so much faster. And it's probably no surprise that Pedro Almodovar was one of the producers for this, because it has kind of that, there's a bit of an Almodovar feel to some of them, especially the last one, I think.
Yes. Yeah, especially the last one. And the first one as well has kind of vibes of I'm So Excited and stuff like that, and it has one of his actors from Talk to Her in it. And yeah, so which ones did you like the most?
I really enjoyed. I loved Las Ratas, actually, the one about the waitress putting
Yeah,
rat poison into the loan shark's food. I really enjoyed that because I thought it was beautiful looking. I loved the kind of setting. I love those kind of grungy diners. It's raining in the evening, all those neon lights and stuff like that. And I love the character of the cook. How like she was just so nonchalant. She was like, jail was better than being a cook. So if you want to poison this guy, we can.
yeah,
Um, Also, and yeah, I think the final one, because I loved was it Erica Reva's performance as Bride Romina. It's just amazing. It's such high melodrama, and
yeah.
I loved how they shot those wedding scenes. Like the early kind of dances are amazing. Like they're absolutely outstanding. I love that. There's a shot coming out of a trombone, or the band plays.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
I
You?
really like Pasternak. I just thought it was hilarious. It's so audacious.
Yeah,
And Bombita, it's just great crack. Like, what a great
yeah.
punchline.
Yeah, exactly. And you could, I when I watched Bombita, I almost had a feeling that I knew what was going to happen. Like I was like, he's definitely going to just bomb this towing company. But seeing how it happened and how he was going about it was great. And it's also got Ricardo Darín as the main character, and he's like kind of the Argentine Harrison Ford, I guess. He's just a super solid actor. He can play anything. He's in all the big hits and everything. So it's really cool to watch him always.
Yeah, I mean, like, it has a savage end to it, but then there's also, like, the coda to that one is actually quite sweet as well. Like, it's it does interesting things with, like, even though it has that revenge thing, it's not it, and even though the film is audacious, it's not off-putting. Like, it still feels like something that would maintain the interest of a very mainstream audience.
No, for
So,
sure, for sure.
so I think we have a lot of good things to say about this film overall.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame in a way that Zifron hasn't really gone to make anything after this. I know he was attached to the $6 billion man, which is meant to star Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson, but after like 3 years, I think creative differences, he left the project.
Right.
Um, so maybe I don't know, is that a good or a bad thing?
I
Because
think it's
you do
interesting that
find,
Wahlberg seems to have, like, he's like a magpie for, like, picking up, because he did Contraband, and and
yeah,
picking up things where he's looking at, foreign directors. He's not stuck in the Hollywood thing.
oh maybe
Uh, he's a clever little magpie.
he is a clever little magpie, I guess. But maybe it was a good thing because you do see it happen a lot, don't you? Where this director makes a film, it makes a big splash on the world stage, and then he's invited to America, and suddenly the machine takes over, and the director kind of loses any stamp on it. Like talking about someone like Jose Badilla who did Elite Squad, and then he went and did the remake of RoboCop, which completely flopped.
But wasn't actually all that bad, actually. I didn't mind that film.
Did you not? I haven't seen it actually because
It's
I was
not
so
that
put off by
bad. It's
everyone.
not that brilliant, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, but
It's nowhere near as good as the original RoboCop, but it's not. It's a million. I'd sooner watch it than RoboCop 3 anyway, and
yeah,
possibly
yeah,
RoboCop
of
2.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, which like of course then you had the one I quite enjoyed as well, the one Almas Fuerte with the two guys driving on the country road. And I love that as just a short. Like that would be a short that, you well, obviously you'd need a bigger budget with cars and stuff like that, but that kind of just simple, like one guy passes another guy on the road, flips him off,
Yeah.
and then realizes he's got a flat tire, and then later on down the line, well, that's going to come bite him, isn't it?
That was one of the more audacious ones as well, and it's great fun. And, like, a lot of people have, called out similarities, or at least, the same sort of vibe as Spielberg's Duel.
Yeah,
And yeah, you can definitely see it. Uh, and it's a really funny one, actually. Yeah,
it is
loved it,
actually, yeah.
especially, and
And the
like, the
ending is
pacing
brilliant
of
as
it.
well, actually.
The ending's brilliant. Yeah. Oh God, I mean, that punchline. I
Yes.
mean, I'd love to have seen that with an audience. I think you'd be roaring with laughter.
Yeah, so I guess the thing I would say about this film is that, yeah, it might be one you might have missed when it originally came out, but if you love anthology films and you want to see something that's very funny, very kind of light, um, has kind of great writing as well. It's great I think for a student, I think it's a great film to see for just writing in terms of like how fast you can tell a story and hit all the beats. yeah, I would definitely recommend Wild Tales 21. Thank you very much for listening. You can contact the show by emailing to extrareal@gmail.com. Search for the Extra Real Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can listen to the show on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you get your podcast from.